Well, he comes highly recommended, and that's not to put any pressure on him. This is John Stapleton joining us, Director of Crewing and Operations at Fox Sports. He is on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at Fox Sports Radio and a broadcaster for the USTA. This is a platform where we get to dive into the career of John. He's got lots of stories. He's very talented at what he's done, and he's worked his way through sports media to become a force today. And so we're going to have a lot of fun figuring out, and there's a lot of this, what's inspirational in John, and obviously we'll throw in some stories as well to entertain and engage. So John, first of all, thank you for doing this. And I can just picture you right now listening to you talking before we started taping this and knowing your job title, that you've got like 100 different yellow Post-it notes all over the place because you have to be so organized as the Director of Crewing and Operations. How do you stay organized knowing that what you oversee, there are so many moving parts?
That's a great question. I mean, honestly, I feel lucky. I do a lot of things the old fashioned way, and then I remember them.
Yes.
I'm just very lucky in that way. Like, I've always been weird. Like, when I was a kid, I memorized all my friends' phone numbers and, just things like that, which no one does anymore, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, it requires discipline, and it requires really to be organized. What it really comes down to is trusting a system, right? Having a system in place, checks and balances, just kind of processes that you go through so that you can sleep at night, right? So you have peace of mind to know, what, I did check that. I went through my workflow, everything checked out. I'm comfortable. I can rest now knowing that everything, that all of the lowercase J's have been dotted.
Yeah. So when you get to a site where you're going to do a broadcast, there's the organization that comes to putting it all together as far as knowing where people are going to work, what role everybody's going to have. But then there is the whole notion of you getting there and you've got all of this equipment, and you've got to make sure that you've got everything that you need and it's in its right spot, and that you have enough time to get it all set up before the broadcast. So what is it like when you get on site and let's say you have a whole truck of equipment and now you're trying to delegate, okay, this goes here, this goes there. What is your game plan before a major broadcast like that?
Well, I mean, it takes a village. We
Yes.
have, there are a lot of people, that work together to put these broadcasts on. And, we have what a lot of people don't know about it is the vast majority of the people that really work for Fox Sports aren't full-time employees like myself. They're freelancers, and they're day hires. And what I mean by that is they could work for ESPN one day, they could work for Fox the next, CBS the day after that. They work on the regional sports networks, which used to be affiliated with Fox and aren't anymore. And so, the people I'm talking about specifically are what we call just the crew, below the line crew, camera operators, audio folks, replays, graphics, basically the people that really take the nuts and bolts of what they're covering at an event and put it into a television show. So those of us that work full time, right, we may spend lots of time planning for a specific event, and then these people show up on day one like, okay, I'm ready to go. And it's like we've spent, a Super Bowl, for instance, takes years to plan. We're scouting locations. Where do we want to put our set? We're working with the NFL, as in they call them activation sites, where you're going to have Radio Row is going to be at the local convention center, and it's right next to a big park where they're going to have different kind of football events and live music and food vendors, and maybe we build a set there. The most recent Super Bowl I worked on was in Miami, and we had a Fox Sports Ferris wheel on the beach in South Beach, and we had this whole branding, our entire full marketing force. We're out there promoting Lego Masters and all the latest, The Masked Singer, all the latest Fox shows outside of sports. And so we spent all this time planning, and then someone we hire locally just shows up and says, hey, I'm here to work today. What do I do? And that's where, it's okay, well, here are all of our camera positions. Here's the equipment. In a market like LA, where I did a lot of work there, the crew is great. I mean, they work games 7 days a week. You got all kinds of professional sports teams. They show up, they know what to do. They know where to bring their camera. They just know kind of what the drill is, require very little direction. Working in some different, it's a great story to give an example. We have a position on the crew called a tech manager, and that's the person that is out there, and they're responsible making sure all of the hardware, the equipment gets set up, making sure the directors get the cameras where they want them, really in control of the entire technical aspect of the production, including transmission. And I'm relatively young in my career and experience, and I got to go do tech manager show up in Pullman. It was a local USC broadcast, so it was something that we were airing on Prime Ticket. And I think Billy Mack was definitely the play-by-play guy. And it's in Pullman, which is, in the middle of,
I've been there. It's out of the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
In the drive from Spokane to Pullman is like, and so I get there, and a lot of the people on the crew are students. And they asked, one of them says, "Hey, what do I do with this cable?" And I looked at him and I said, "Well, you're the utility, like that. You tell me, that's your job." And my inexperience was exposed, because I'm used to showing up at a show in LA where I just show up and everybody just does their job. Now I'm up here, and I have students asking me how to do their jobs, and it was a great experience. I had a great time. The show went great. I'm pretty sure USC probably pounded them based on, when that show took place. But yeah, I mean, there's again, it takes a village. There are people in smaller parts of the country where, we hire them, and, they're a teacher. They have another job during the week. Not every place is LA where you can make a full-time living, running camera for professional sports teams. We're in, and again, it goes to a lot of college towns. There isn't that kind of work to support a full-time job. So people have other jobs, and they do this stuff on the sides. And, for the most part, Fox Sports, not necessarily FS1, but we're a weekend business. So people can actually, take additional jobs on the weekend. And does it require more attention by management? For sure. But that's where directors also earn their money, because they're in a situation where they have to much more actively direct and really ask the crew what they expect and what they want. And it's a different kind of skill set than sliding into a truck where, or I should say, just a broadcast truck, a production where, it's the fifth day of a 7-day Angels homestand, and you have the same crew you had the day before. Everybody kind of knows the deal. You're reacting to what happens on the field. Then you get out there in a really remote place, and you're required to offer a lot more direction.
You brought up that USC Washington State football game. Fast forward a couple years from that one game, and I think Cougar fans would remind you that when Sam Darnold came up to Pullman, and things went a little bit different. And Washington State.
I think I might be talking Matt Leinart.
Okay, so you're going back, yeah.
I might be. It might have not been. I might have been. It wasn't. It was before Darnold. Maybe Matt Barkley.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure. It was USC was things have changed much to the liking of Cougar fans.
For sure.
USC was still, if it wasn't a Pete Carroll year, it wasn't very far removed from one.
For sure. Yeah. And USC's trying to get back to that spot. Washington State's trying to hang on to that dominance that they had under Mike Leach with new head coach Nick Rolovich. We're joined by John Stapleton, Director of Crewing and Operations at Fox Sports. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at Fox Sports Radio. So I hear you talk about how, depending upon where you are, where the broadcast is, you might have somebody that does this full time. You might have somebody that does this during the weekend, and you never know. Some people have been doing this for 40 years, and some are new to the game. Like you said, some college kids who are hungry to learn, but don't have that experience. So how do you curtail your leadership skills, and how has that evolved over the years to where basically how to go into a situation and how to lead in a way that you think is going to be incentivizing everybody around you and your crew to do their best and be in that comfortable but thriving workspace?
That's a great question. I mean, that's something that really has evolved quite a bit in my growth as a professional. When I first started, I have a very strong moral compass. At least I like to think so. And that guides me through a lot of decisions, especially when I'm doing something I'm unfamiliar with, right? Like I'm going to do what I think the right thing is, and I want to do things the right way. And part of that growth was when I first started. It was very important to me that I treat everyone equally, and that when I first started in LA, I was dealing with about 200 or 300 different people that I was hiring regularly. Now it's thousands of people all over the country, and what I learned was you can be fair without being equal. And what I mean by that is everybody can start on the same kind of level ground, but everyone is different. And the way you manage people should be different. There are people that literally like crave being yelled at. They may not say that, but that's what they want. They want somebody to light a fire under them. I mean, it's just like any kind of coaching.
Yeah.
You can have a Bobby Knight that fires. I feel like everything I say is making me sound old, but you can have you can have someone that lights a fire and motivates people with it by way of excitement and volume. And then you have people that get more philosophical about it. Someone like a Coach K that's more in a caring, how do I show these people that I care? And there's a balance, and that's that's the struggle. That's the ongoing struggle. Is the thing I will say though about motivating people is, in our industry, it's such a desirable industry, right? It's a desirable enough industry that you can interview someone like me and it's considered entertainment.
Yeah.
Just because I'm in a position that a lot of people would like to be in. And motivation, if you have a hard time getting motivated, you're in the wrong business. And people don't last very long. When I first started in production, and I'll name drop my brother. He is my brother. He's a poker analyst, an on-air poker analyst, Joe Stapleton. He was a production coordinator at Mad TV, and I was a PA for him. And when I first kind of started, when I was in a position where I started kind of hiring runners, he said, never hire a PA with too much experience. And I was like, well, why? Like, you always hire somebody with experience. He goes, well, if they were that good, they wouldn't be a PA anymore. Good point. Kind of made me realize that. And that's maybe look at things that way. That was a different perspective, something I hadn't really thought about. And ultimately what that is saying is, what I'm getting at is, I'm quoting an executive producer that I used to work for, Tom Fuhr. I will name names. He used to say, you don't work in this business because you want to, you work in this business because you need to. There's nothing else that makes you happy. And if you are doing it just because you want to, you're just not going to make it, because the amount of effort, the work that has to go in, and just because of the desirability. If you have an entry-level job, there are 30 people out there waiting to get that job. They want that job. So if you're not willing to go the distance and to be motivated, to be fired up, there are people waiting in the wings that are. So I mean, for the most part, motivation is something that, especially when you talk to full-time staff, I mean, people like myself that have been around for a long time, I mean, we are very independent, and, weekends are a luxury kind of a thing. You really do. It's a lifestyle. It really is. Work-life balance is something that it's great. We're all working to kind of get better at those types of things. But yeah, I mean, you really live the job.
Yeah, you do. You can't think that you're going to have off times during vacations. For example, like I'm working the next 6 overnight shifts. So like, you just have to be open to it. And I love it. I'm just grateful to be in that door, as you know. So anybody that has to want to be in this business knows that there are sacrifices that are made that you might not have to make if you have a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job. And one of the first jobs, speaking of jobs that you had, and you spoke about your brother, was you were a sports reporter at Card Player magazine. What am I
Yeah.
going to learn from a young John Stapleton when he is a sports reporter at Card Player magazine?
You were going to learn that do not turn down 6 weeks of them putting you up in Vegas, because you have the time of your life. What an amazing 6 weeks. Yeah, it was my brother. My brother was behind the scenes. He was an aspiring filmmaker, television, writer, comedy, kind of that's really what he wanted to do. He went to college for it. And he had this thing, he got into poker, and I was always, me and my friends, we rolled dice, we played cards, we gambled a lot growing up. I wasn't like, somebody who would read up on poker or really knew how to play the game. I just liked poker, and I was a character at the tables. I make a lot of jokes, like just stupid poker jokes, like, some that my brother, I think, has used, but,
Hopefully he credited you. Hopefully he credited you.
Well, he offered me, it was, I will give you $300. This is true. Or I will give you 10% of my first paycheck, whichever you choose. And this was like before he was really making money. And okay. I said, I'm reserving a favor to be named later, which I'm sure he's still not fond of the fact that I haven't cashed that in yet. But yeah, I was just there. My job was to be a chip counter. So really my job was to do live updates, like blog posts. So you want to know how Phil Ivey is doing in the, high-low pot limit Omaha tournament. I was going around, and you stand there with a little notebook and you count their chips and their stacks. You walk around the tables in this big, conference room area at the Rio Hotel, and you count so you can give updates on who's leading, who's the chip leader, how are these people doing, and people could follow online. And they had someone there that they had hired to do on-camera interviews, and it wasn't going well. The owner of the company was Card Player at the time. It's Card Player magazine, cardplayer.com. They had exclusive live rights coverage to the World Series. So you could wait and watch the main event on ESPN months later. This was before they did the final table live and all the things that they kind of do now. It was all just recorded and edited and done way down the road. So we were giving live updates, and the person they hired to be the reporter wasn't doing so well, and so they said, "Does anyone else have interest?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll give it a shot." And I loved it, and I feel, of course, I said I was awesome. I was terrific. I thought I got some really positive feedback from the owners, and they liked kind of the shtick. I'm always making jokes, and I had a great time, and I learned a lot about how to interview people. I would go up. The first interviews I did are so brutal to watch because I have a list of interviews in my head, and I'm not listening to the response. I'm thinking about my next question. And then, I learned, okay, you have to listen to the person and engage in a conversation. And I got to interview Pamela Anderson and Hank Azaria and all these, all the non-poker people. Everyone was like, "Oh, Phil Ivey doesn't do interviews. Don't even ask him." I just went up and asked him, and he was like, "Sure, I'll do an interview." So I got interviews. I just got such a great experience. I made a lot of friends. I kind of became a part of that poker community. And my brother ran with it, and he ended up, now he's the one of the premier poker analysts out there, color commentators, and a big part of that is comedy. Much like Norm and Chad kind of paved the way for that. Poker is a boring thing to watch. I mean, let's be honest. It's numbers driven. It's, so adding a little comedy in there is kind of necessary to make it more entertainment and watchable. And it's something my brother's been able to make a career out of. But, when I went to Fox Sports West after that, I thought I was going to be on camera. And, I think that's, if for all the kids out there listening and watching this, that's, everybody wants to be talent because that's all you see. You spend your whole youth watching sporting events on TV. You don't see camera operators and replay operators and graphics and people in the crewing department and the technical operations. all you see are the people on camera. So you think that's your only path to getting to do that for a living. And what I got to learn by taking the job at Fox Sports West is there were all these other things that were really stimulating to me. And this particular, a lot of it, why am I where I am? It's, it was opportunity. They had a need in this particular area. And it intrigued me. It was stimulating intellectually and mentally. And, I just kind of went with it and took the opportunities that came in. Still to this day, I kind of wonder, like, hey, Joe Buck gets sick and they need to call somebody in. I'm here. I'm ready to go. If
You are there.
me. That will never happen. But it's funny to, you just always kind of look back and, it's those interpersonal skills are always going to be valuable. As far as just engaging with people, like, hey, when I'm talking to someone, I should probably listen to them.
Speaking of engaging with people and speaking of being in LA, you got to meet and got to know Petros Papadakis.
Yes.
What do you love most about him?
Oh God. Authenticity is probably, what you see is what you get. He hasn't changed a bit. And I was explaining to Bryan before, but I got to know him before I knew him as a personality. I think he was relatively new too. I think he had just kind of started. I started at Fox Sports West in 2006, August of 2006. So, he was relatively young in his career too. But yeah, what a guy. Just exactly what you'd expect. Just would talk to me like I would talk to him like I would talk to any of my peers, like a friend, a contemporary. There was no, kind of office jargon. It was just come in and just being himself, and I'm kind of the same way. I don't, I'm pretty open, and yeah, I got to get to know him, love the guy. Last time I saw him, I had a few too many, but had a great time with him. He's just someone that, like I feel like I could run into him today and we would go hang out and it would be like nothing, like just totally normal. How you doing? Like no big deal, like nothing. And I haven't seen him in forever. But yeah, I still get excited when I see his name on my paperwork, or like if I know I'm going to be in LA, I'll check to see if he's going to be around, around the lot or something. I just love, he's just one of those guys, love running into him, because it just makes you feel good about yourself.
I'm totally in agreement with you. He's genuine. He really does care. It doesn't matter what you do, what your role is in a broadcast. He genuinely is wanting to be your friend, and you meet him for the first time and you instantly become friends with him, and you feel like he's one of your friends, one of your contemporaries, no matter what role you play in this whole sports media world. Final question for you. John Stapleton is with us, Director of Crewing and Operations at Fox Sports. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at Fox Sports Radio and one of the broadcasters for USTA. What is the proudest moment of your broadcasting career?
Yeah, that is a great question. And honestly, I don't know if I'm going to give two answers.
Okay.
My first NBA All-Star game. There was an All-Star. I did one NBA All-Star game as an employee of TNT. So I did the full gamut, Saturday night and the game coverage. But in the late 2000s, Staples Center hosted an All-Star game. And I was working for the RSN in LA, and we got to do like pre and post game coverage because it was in our home venue. And there was a guy, I was there with a guy named Sean Kopalakis, who now works for NFL Network.
He's been on with me.
Has he?
He's a good dude. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's, again, also another guy.
Yes.
Just love. I saw also you had Adam Stanko on, and I have the most bizarre kind of connection to him.
Oh, you knew Adam. Okay, cool.
I don't know him directly, but I know his podcasting partner, Noah Kozlov, is good friends with my brother from college. They both went to BU together. Wow. And I know Noah very well, but I also know Kyle Reichling really well, who I think was Stanko's boss at Pac-12 Network. So he's like this weird guy. I've never met him directly, but I've listened to his podcast, and like I feel like I know him because we have so many connections. I went through, saw some of the people you had.
Oh
But yeah,
yeah.
Kopelak is awesome guy, and I bet he remembers this too. We went in and they had auxiliary media seating in the 300 level, and there was literally a list on the wall where your seats were on the media. I mean, this is just how big of a media event. Normally you just go in, you find a place in the press box, but they have to have assigned seating at a big event like this. And we had seats, like we were sitting, we had little working stations, desk lights like you would normally have in a press box, but we had actual seats in the 300 section for auxiliary press seating for All-Star Saturday night. It was the one that Blake Griffin jumped over the Kia.
Oh, of course.
And that was like, I always wanted to be in the NBA as a kid. And I kind of took that moment and said, you made it. Like, you made it to the NBA. Like, you're on, I was at Game 7 the year the Lakers beat the Celtics. That's certainly a career highlight because the I don't know if it was me, but the electricity in that building, especially as the time was winding down, and I think Artest hit a couple of big threes, and that built, like, I'm getting chills just talking about it. I mean, just the energy, when you're an event like that, like a Super Bowl or anything like that, the ushers, the referees, the coach, everybody in that building is geeked to be there. There isn't a single person that's like, oh, whatever, I have my corporate seats, I'm just here texting. Like, everybody is, amped, and it's really a special feeling. But the one that I really have to say is the Field of Dreams show we just did. Was really right up there. And the reason is those events that I mentioned, those are great, amazing events to be at. But the show wasn't, I've been to 2 NFL games in my life. They were both Super Bowls. It's just the way it worked out. I mean, and this Field of Dreams show was the one show I worked on where I watched it with my own eyes and I said, this was pretty special. Like, this is a pretty great show. And immediately that was the feedback online, right? Like, the critics, everybody, like, that was just a universally loved show. And, it was a cool event to be a part of. I'm a diehard Yankees fan, so I wanted to kind of interject myself in that show. I wasn't there. I got to watch it. And honestly, another little kind of weird thing about me, I listen to the Yankees games on the radio because it's like work watching the games. I want to just be a fan. I don't want to be breaking down the director's decisions or, oh, that was a glitch or whatever. It's easier for me to connect with the game and the competition by listening on the radio. And this show, I watched this game and I watched the pregame show, and I was just like, this is beautiful. But you always have that, even if you go see a movie and you're like, I love this movie, you're like, I wonder if the critics will like it though. You kind of want to make sure you get that validation, and to get that validation immediately, just like, the proverbial 4 stars, was pretty cool. I mean, it was a really special event. And I think that, just the way it was covered, the drones, the special cameras we used and stuff, really made it a special show, and had a film. I mean, it was like a film in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's the one I think that I'm most proud of, really. There are other things I'd rather put on a resume, but as far as something that I walked away from really being proud of what we did, that was a really special show today. And I think we all, everybody, the director did some interviews afterwards. I mean, I think everybody was really kind of, had that kind of hangover, that high hangover for a couple of days, just kind of on cloud 9. Just really, really pleased with what we pulled off there. I mean, at a cornfield of all places.
It was so well received. It was the dominant story in sports radio for many afterwards. And I have a feeling, John, that many more majestic, magical broadcasts like that will be in your near future. We all love that, and we just want to see that again. I think that was the first inclination for people, was once it was over, was, when is this going to happen again? And I'm sure with how well it was pulled off, like you said, and the role you played in it, that won't be the only time that they have that there. John Stapleton, Director of Crewing and Operations at Fox Sports. I'm Bryan Fenley, an anchor at Fox Sports Radio and with the USTA. This has been a lot of fun, John. Thank you for doing this, man. I really did enjoy this.
Thanks, Bryan. Afterwards, I gotta talk to you about tennis too. I got a tennis.
Yes, we'll do it.